Now I know what you're all thinking. Elakidra, how could you possibly disparage the interactive masterpiece that is Final Fantasy VII? Well, lovely viewers, take a chill and relax because that's not why we're here. We're not here to disparage Final Fantasy VII, a brilliant addition to the series and a PlayStation 1 staple title. Personally, I love FF7 as much as any of you. But the title has become something of a darling among the Final Fantasy fanbase and the developers who aim to cater to them. So much so that 7 has the capacity to overshadow other games in the series, including those that are objectively superior in some ways, and subjectively superior in the minds of many fans. And first among those overlooked titles is a game that directly preceded it, Final Fantasy VI, or 3 for those Americans who were playing the game back in the early 90s. Final Fantasy VI is generally regarded by the FF fanbase to be the best in the series, due to its incredible cast of characters and fascinating villain, Kefka Palazzo. Is he dark and brooding like Sephiroth? No. But his mad cunning, seemingly silly antics, and sheer unpredictability make him a far more unsettling and disturbing adversary. His villainy makes for quite the ride through 6's roller coaster of a story. We all have our favorites. Personally, my go-to is 10. But 6 has a reputation and following that has more than earned the FF7 remake treatment. So without further ado, I'm Elakidra, and this is why Final Fantasy VI deserves a remake just as much as 7. Let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. 6 is older than 7, and therefore has more to improve on and appreciate in a modern remake. Square made leaps and bounds on the technical improvements made from one title to the other. The leap from 2 to 3 dimensions is a far more challenging transition than people realize, and developers at the time did not receive the recognition they deserved. 3D games stand apart from 2D titles for one stark reason. We experience them in the same dimension that we experience reality. Because we live in a 3-dimensional space, 3D games more accurately replicate our experience. Now I love 2D games. They have a simple beauty and nostalgic atmosphere that can't be dismissed. But a 3-dimensional game world makes it easy for players to see themselves in the world of the game. We've been doing that with 7 for 30 years. I can see myself walking down the dingy industrial streets of Midgar, or taking in the peaceful yet otherworldly vibes of Cosmo Canyon. Now all I want is to experience 6 in the same way. I want to get lost in the mines of Narsh, and fly over Doma in the Falcon. I want to see Magitech Armor's full capabilities and all their mechanized magical glory. And most of all, I want to see the mad yet horrifying antics of Kefka play out on screen like I always imagined. I want 6 to get the remake treatment. Before we talk about how Final Fantasy VI was an incredible tour de force that changed the landscape of gaming forever, and therefore deserves a remake, we need to talk about why Final Fantasy VII was an incredible tour de force that changed the landscape of gaming forever, and why Square felt that game deserved the honor first. There's no understating the technical hazards that Square had to overcome to get this game made. Final Fantasy VII was created during the height of the transition from 2 to 3 dimensions in gaming. Final Fantasy was one of many series making this transition during the mid to late 90s. At a budget of $45 million, it was the biggest dev budget at the time, and releasing on the PlayStation, it was the first Final Fantasy on disc. The 3D graphics, abysmal as they appear now, blew us out of the water back in the 90s. The expansive environments, the fast-paced active time battle system, the incredible set moments depicted in cutscenes that would have been unheard of even a few years before. All this to say the game was a phenomenon when it came out, and that legacy endures to this day. Cloud, Tifa, and Sephiroth are constantly on the lips of Final Fantasy fans. 7 is the game most referenced outside the community, and the one with the most recognizable cast of characters. Final Fantasy VII is a cultural touchstone, representative of the time in which it was produced. All Final Fantasies have name recognition, but Square knows they can build a game in the FF7 verse and get an almost guaranteed return on their investment, as evidenced by the many Final Fantasy VII spin-offs and one feature-length film. Square knows FF7 is a safe bet from a business perspective.
It's just...
To be frank, Final Fantasy VII was a much bigger hit commercially, selling more in its opening weekend than 6 and quadrupled its overall sales by unit. Now you can attribute some of that to industry growth between titles. The video game industry was more than $10 billion bigger than it had been by the time 7 came out compared to 6. And yet, 6 is consistently rated higher than 7, or ranked without 7 being mentioned at all in press lists of best RPGs or games in general. Not that the gaming press is infallible or unbiased by any stretch, but this coverage is often consistent with community consensus that Final Fantasy VI is the best game in the series, if not always one's personal favorite. Both games receive the same benefit from the press's bias for AAA developers. So why is the consensus of 6's superiority so prevalent in the community? Well, 6 was $80 when it came out. That's more than the regular edition of AAA games today, without adjusting for inflation. Mode 7 graphics at their finest. Final Fantasy VI was a technical marvel. It did things on the Super Nintendo that we didn't even know were possible at the time. 6 revolutionized story in video games, and did so with a character-driven plot mentality that really attaches to the characters and their world. Locke the Thief, whose lost love has forever made him an enemy to the Empire of Crystal. Terra, the half-Esper, whose semi-magical nature and lost memories have left her unequipped to contend with the harsh world in which she lives. Sabin, who left his pampered life as a prince to become a martial artist and escape the pressures of rule. Nearly every character has a deep, well-rounded backstory that ties them into the events of the game. They tether us to the plot, as each character's plight ties you that much deeper into the world and its story. It's the kind of game that instantly hooks you and pulls you that much deeper with each character who joins your struggle against the Empire over the forces of magic that threaten to tear the world apart. The active time turn-based battle system perfected the art at a time when things were just starting to grow stale. Every review of 6, from release to each subsequent re-release, has blown the hinges off the market with one near-perfect score after another. I'd even venture to say it's no exaggeration that Final Fantasy VI is not only just as good as 7, but is often regarded by the pre-Gen Z gaming community to be one of the greatest video games of all time. Now, before even considering remaking a game, developers should strongly consider what exactly they have to add to a title. I mean, why remake it at all if you aren't going to add something to improve upon the original work? When 7 was remade, a particular focus was given to modernizing the original battle system and padding out the runtime with additional plot points and cinematics. 6 could benefit from a lot of the same. While I question the need to add additional story material to a 30-year-old game, a concerted effort to expound upon 6's many fascinating character tales would be welcome. I would love to learn more about the Espers and the personal histories of our main cast. Not to mention all the mechanical improvements that 6 could benefit from. While I love 6 and 7's active time battle systems, Remake's combat system does do a really good job of creating the fast-paced tension of action RPGs. Do I personally prefer the strategic interplay of turn-based combat? Yes, 100%.
Oh, 100%. Oh, God damn it!
But I can appreciate a good action RPG system, even if I feel like the change was unnecessary. I love the strategic options, and the slowing of the game world to a crawl while you sort through your options is an excellent way to mimic the original system. Good stuff. Lastly, the stability of the game shows that in at least one regard, Square is keeping up with the Joneses. No bugs in Remake that I've seen, and only a few frame drops that are as much my computer's fault as the game's. The menus are simple and quick to navigate, although the map and waypoint system is a little obtuse. Looking at you, Aerith chapter. God, she's annoying. Anywho, 6's Magicite and 7's Materia work in much the same way, with the character equipped with the artifact learning associated spells from holding and using that associated artifact. Of course, 6's original menus are a mid-90s UI nightmare, and will benefit greatly from the remake treatment. Some of you may be wondering why I put so much energy into requesting an FF6 remake. Why? After all, it's not even my favorite. Well, 10 got a well-deserved remaster with modest quality of life improvements, so here we are. And beggars can't be choosers, so... The bottom line is, 6 deserves it. It's a fan favorite, and one of the oldest titles with one of the most relatable casts and themes that still resonate, even to this day. And at the end of the day, it's just something that we'd like to see happen. I ask because 6 is a fantastic bit of art that deserves the same reverence and appreciation that its sequel gets. The game deserves it, and so do the fans. I mean, come on, Square, it's easy money. I'm Elakidra, and this has been why Final Fantasy VI deserves a remake just as much as 7. So like and subscribe if you found my video enjoyable. And please leave a comment below, as the discourse is my favorite part of making these videos. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.